Today we will study about one of the most benevolent Governor General of British East India Company, William Bentinck. The British East India Company's rule started from 1757 onwards. It was consolidated by Robert Clive, and we have other Governor Generals like Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis, Lord Wellesley, etc. In the 19th century, one of the most popular Governor General who ruled India was William Bentinck, who was the Governor General from 1828 to 1835. During his time in England, new ideas like utilitarianism, evangelicism, humanism, liberalism, and other ideas had been propagated, and William Bentinck was deeply influenced by these ideas. He had earlier served as the governor of Madras Presidency, and in 1828 he was appointed as Governor General of India and came to Bengal. During his time, the company was in deep financial crisis, as a result of which William Bentinck introduced several reforms. He took drastic steps to consolidate the British rule in India, the company's reigns. Some of the popular reforms which he introduced were the financial reforms. Since company was in deep financial crisis, he concentrated on financial reforms. He appointed two committees for civil and military expenditure, and after they submitted their reports, he took the following steps. First, he abolished many sinecure jobs and reduced the salaries of the company servants. He also reduced the allowances and reduced the bhatta system to single bhatta. Then he abolished provincial courts of appeal and circuit courts and thus saved expenditure on them. Nextly, he regulated and licensed opium trade. There was a triangle trade among East India Company in India, which was exporting opium to China. From there, they were importing tea and was exporting to England. This is the triangle trade. Since opium was largely produced in India, was not permitted. The company's traders were smuggling it into China, and William Bentinck regulated it and gave license and thus began to collect taxes which helped in increasing the treasuries of the company. Then he also brought many revenue-free lands under government's control and began to tax them. Nextly, after surveying the land and depending on the fertility of the soil, the revenue settlement was fixed for 30 years. Then to reduce the expenditure on the employees and to save the expenditure, he began to appoint Indians into the company service, where, when compared to the Europeans or Britishers, the Indians' salaries were very low. Then nextly we come to the judicial reforms. In 1829, the appeal courts and circuit courts were abolished, and in its place Bengal was divided into 20 divisions, and for each division he appointed a commissioner who was to perform the duties of the courts as well. Then these commissioners were empowered to supervise the collectors and the police. Nextly, magistrates were given the power to punish the guilty, thereby the duty of the several judges were taken away, rather force were taken away and they were given to magistrates. Nextly, in the year 1831, by an act, Indians were to be appointed in the courts as magistrates, let's say. Then Amins were also to be appointed by Governor General in Council, who also could be Indians. Then nextly, he abolished the Nizamat and Diwani Adalat at Allahabad and introduced the jury system. He also abolished Persian as a court language and in its place introduced English and other vernacular languages. Coming to the administrative reforms, he revised the policy of Cornwallis and began to appoint Indians as tax collectors and other at lower posts, and he appointed a board of revenue at Allahabad to look into the revenue aspects. Coming to the most important aspect of William Bentinck, that is the social reforms. William Bentinck believed that it was what is called as white man's burden theory. That is, he believed that it was the duty of the Britishers to spread culture and knowledge to the Indians. As a result of in this background, he introduced social reforms, whereby the first one was he introduced English as a medium of education, and by the virtue of this 1813 Charter Act, whereby a, an amount of 1 lakh had been granted for education, with the advice of Charles Macaulay, William Bentinck decided to use that amount for to spread English education. Thus, English medium Western education schools began to be established during his period. In this matter, he was also supported by the Raja Ram Mohan Roy. Then he also established a medical college at Calcutta. Nextly, he abolished sati. Then he made the converted Christians eligible to inherit their ancestral property. He also tried to put a ban on child marriages. Nextly, he undertook public works and improved the means of irrigation and dug canals, and he rebuilt the Grand Trunk Road from Calcutta to Delhi. With the help of Sir William Sleeman, he suppressed the Thuggy system, and many thugs were rehabilitated after their imprisonment, and during their imprisonment period, their their families were taken care of by the company. William Bentinck followed the policy of non-intervention and towards the Indian states. The only states in which he intervened was the Nizams, and then secondly the Coorg, where when there was disturbance, he annexed Coorg. With all the other states like Bhopal, Gwalior, and Mysore and other states, he followed the policy of non-intervention. He also entered into a treaty with Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Because of these reforms, especially the introduction of education and abolition of sati and others, he is considered as a humanitarian, most benevolent Governor General during the British East India Company's period. He is also said to have been soft towards Indians and tried to help them in their development. The credit of the introduction of schools and colleges and English education goes to William Bentinck, without whom English education or Western education would not have been possible. Coming to the conclusion part of it, that is the estimate of William Bentinck. He was a man of resolution, man of capacity, and full of spirits, and he worked for the welfare of the people. He was also more concerned about their welfare, and in their interest he worked. He also introduced the spirit of freedom and thinking into the Indians, and he increased the revenue. He helped Indians in solving the unemployment problem and thus reduced their grievances. He also introduced the steam navigation in India. Thus, these policies were later on followed by the other governor generals. However, during the time of Dalhousie, the anti-British feeling among the Indians began to increase, and soon after his departure led to the revolt against the Britishers in 1857. But William Bentinck was given a good farewell by the Indians as such. Thank you.